Knowing that what's happening is an immune disruption, one might think directly, okay, what's going on? What is causing that change? At the moment the disease appears. Is there some stimulus or situation that induces abnormal functioning of the immune system? Nowadays, we are truly witnessing a really alarming epidemiological increase in autoimmune diseases like we've never seen before. Diseases like multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, diabetes, asthma, and other situations of immune hyperreactivity have increased by several 100% from an epidemiological standpoint in recent decades. There is indeed an extraordinary change happening with this group of diseases that are based on a disruption in the functioning of the immune system, as we all know, where our immunity stops recognizing certain tissues as its own and starts attacking them. And that's the common denominator we can find in the long list of diseases that fall under this chapter of autoimmunity. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about the skin, the liver, the thyroid, or the central nervous system. Knowing that what's happening is an immune disruption in the body, one might think immediately and without hesitation, okay, what's going on? What is causing that change at the moment? Disease appears. Is there some stimulus or situation that induces abnormal functioning of the immune system? And of course, it could be, but we are going to try to share the message that what's really happening is that the immune system is responding to that stimulus in an inadequate way. And it does this because the immune system itself has been shaped in a certain way beforehand inadequately. Means that the immune system is responding at the moment the disease appears to a stimulus that pushes the system above the threshold where a disrupted immune system was functioning correctly. That's because this immune system has been altered in a certain way beforehand, and what it's doing is responding through a pattern that has already been incorporated, already learned, which has developed throughout the individual's history. And at that moment, when the disease appears, since things aren't black or white, but rather there's a spectrum where adaptation can certainly and definitely occur, there comes a point where it reaches that limit, that threshold where the disease shows up. And in this talk, we're going to focus on what those situations and elements are that can influence the degree of maturation and proper functioning of the immune system, which tends to be altered in people with these kinds of diseases. And for that, we need to go back. It's about taking a look at the moment when the pattern of immunity that a person develops throughout their life is acquired and developed, which is what will characterize them as more likely to develop certain types of diseases. There are people who beforehand will develop a special vulnerability to a group of diseases where the immune system is functioning below its level in a state of immunosuppression. This includes certain infectious diseases, cancer, and others. While in other situations, what we find is exactly the opposite, a hyperreactive immune system, a hyperreactivity that will be associated with an excessive defense against stimuli that aren't aggressive in themselves, that aren't dangerous, like a grain of pollen, in the case of allergic asthma, or in the case of eczematous dermatitis when coming into contact with certain fabrics or foods, or what could be an autoimmune disease related to the body's own cells and tissues. So, what things are especially related to the process of maturation and dysregulation of the immune system? That's the specific focus we're going to use to help understand this broad group of diseases, in particular. Diseases, and as we've been saying, we can't overlook the early stages in which the immune system is going to develop, and for that, we need to go back to the very moment of origin. In fact, as we will see, and it's not an exaggeration, even before that, because from the very moment of conception through the period of gestation, at the time of birth, and in the first years of life, a series of fundamental stages will occur sequentially, which are essential for understanding how the immune system develops. And not just the immune system, but it's going to happen in a way that's very connected to the nervous system. The immune system and the nervous system are going to develop alongside each other and will create a series of interconnections that depend on each other. That's why we know that the nervous system is going to regulate the functioning of the immune system through certain structures. But we also know that proper functioning of the immune system or an altered immune system will be accompanied by cognitive alterations or memory issues or functional alterations from the perspective of the central nervous system. We understand this broad group of relationships well when we study, for example, the behavior linked to illness. Any kind of illness, an infectious disease, a viral disease, a simple cold, a virus, triggers an immune response that, through the secretion of a series of cytokine molecules, will produce a series of effects in the central nervous system. This system is prepared through its receptors in its various cells, in the glia, in the neurons, in the endothelium, to gather information from those cytokines that come from the immune system, which have detected a danger in any other area of the body, like the lungs or the liver. They will carry a message that turns into an order at a behavioral and cognitive level. And so, for example, the type of relational response or appetite, sexuality, or even emotional state will be altered. All those functions that seemingly come directly from the nervous system are actually happening through an interleukin beta in this example we're using, and it comes from the immune system, which has the ability to produce a series of effects on the nervous system. That's going to give us a series of clues to understand how this group of diseases really gets started. We'll see that, but let's get back to the point we're at, which is the moment of common development, related to both the immune system and the nervous system. One of the main structures in the nervous system that's related to the functioning of the immune system is the hypothalamus. It's going to be the main element for regulating and modulating immune function throughout the body. And at the moment of their maturation, both the hypothalamus and immediately after the hippocampus will be responsible for producing a series of regulatory effects, basically regulation, balance, on the functioning of the immune system. And these structures will mature in the very early stages of life. We say that from the moment of conception, through some of the conditions, that the state of the pregnant woman will incorporate and also during the rest of the pregnancy, the stages of maturation of all these brain centers that take on that main function of immune regulation will be subject to some changes, some alterations. What can happen, for example, there could be a situation of immune activation in the pregnant woman, an inflammatory process, again, a virus or some other type of infection. But the diet is also going to be very important. And we know that the diet of the pregnant woman is going to directly impact the development of all these structures. The type of microbiota that the pregnant woman has is going to be very important for allowing proper development of all these structures. We know that there are going to be a series of key elements in the form of vitamins and minerals that will also ensure that these structures mature properly. And above all, and very importantly, we know that effects related to stress through the placenta will be able to establish a pattern or a kind of situation in which these structures will mature. This means that the stress signals from the mother, which she might be experiencing in relation to an illness, but also due to her psychosocial factors, including her social or economic situation, or even emotional state, whether this pregnancy is desired or not, and whether it comes at the right time or not, will all produce a series of changes at the molecular level. The molecules related to stress, corticosteroids, adrenaline, and not only that, but a main organ will be activated when it comes to producing the maturation of all these structures. We're talking about the placenta. The placenta will also produce its own cytokines, which along with those coming from the mother will establish the framework where these neural structures will be generated, which in turn will set the functioning of the immune system. And of course, this is happening in those very early stages of life that are going to establish the patterns of functioning, not only at the immune level, but also from a metabolic perspective, from an energy standpoint, the function of the mitochondria or the type of microbiota we have, along with what that represents functionally. We're now thinking about the behavioral aspect, the emotional regulation part, the relational aspect, both outward and inward throughout life, which is going to be established precisely during this entire perinatal development period. Prenatal, the moment of birth, which we say is very important, and also the postnatal period,